From the grind to the glory, one man's journey proves that heart, hustle, and determination change the game. This is Catch as Catch Can with George Tinsley Sr., where adversity is met head-on and champions are made. Here's George.
Welcome to Catch as Catch Can. I'm George Tinsley Sr., former professional athlete, entrepreneur, author, and your host. This is a space where we sit down with leaders who face real challenges, learned real lessons, and kept moving forward.
Turning obstacles into opportunity.
Joining me today is James Hilovsky, a franchise advisor who helps professionals transition into strategic business ownership. A former Major League Baseball player, James brings a disciplined, competitive mindset into his advisory work. He guides clients through a data-driven process to evaluate franchise opportunities that align with their financial goals, lifestyles, preferences, and a long-term vision. Welcome, James.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me.
James, glad to have you. And in particular, your discipline is one that kind of warms my heart. So we'll have a good time talking about the franchising industry on probably all sides. So I want to get started. This particular podcast is about turning obstacles to opportunities. My latest book that I wrote, Catch as Catch Can, is just a nice way of saying turning your obstacles to opportunities. So our audience that will be viewing our program will be looking to see how you went from different obstacles to where you have been very successful. So I just wanted to highlight that at the very beginning. Excuse me. So let's just kind of start going back to your early days, as far back as you would like, to tell us a little bit about your history and how you began how your life and career began.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So in high school, I was obviously I've been an athlete and I worked in the restaurant business. It was like a busboy, expediter in a very fine dining restaurant experience. So very early, I got the customer experience. You got to do the customer service experience. And then, after high school, I had the opportunity to play minor league baseball. So I was from a small town, George. So I went out there and I just saw all the people there that could throw just as hard as anybody I'd ever seen throw baseballs and spin a curveball better than I'd ever seen. So I probably was, it was that big fish in a little pond. Now I was a little fish in a huge pond. And I struggled mightily. I just got to be honest. I struggled mightily with confidence. And then I got hurt. And then it was just, okay, this is not going to work out. It was just I suffered an injury rotator cuff that was not really going to be, going to be able to overcome that and probably get through my obstacles. So now the cheering stopped. What do? So I went back to the same restaurant I worked at in high school and developed a love for the restaurant business. And I actually wound up, getting into that. And then I had an opportunity to join another company in actually the fast food world and was able to be a general manager there. And I put my sports acumen into my philosophy of managing my restaurant. Hey, I'm the general manager. I'm going to build a great team. I'm going to build them up. I'm going to put the best players in their places. And, I'm going to make sure that everyone on my team feels like they are needed and wanted. And so that's kind of the philosophy I've used in business. So I worked my way up in this all the way up to, regional manager. And then one of the largest or a company that wanted to start out in franchising, they gave me a call, said, hey, we want to start our franchise division. We have one store. We want to build this right away. We want you to come lead that. So I left that company and went into the other company. We had one store. I helped build that up to 100 stores. supporting the franchisees, supporting, the company initiatives. And when you're starting out new, boy, do you have to change your philosophy on some things where you thought, I think this system's going to go really well. And you go, oh, shoot, that didn't work. So you got to be able to pivot quite rapidly to do that. So then it was, okay, we're doing really well. And then the largest franchisee came over and said, hey, come partner with us. And it was right near the town where I lived in. So that's where they were based out of. So that was intriguing. The biggest intriguing part, though, it was owned by the dad. I was going to partner with the dad and two brothers. The dad played NFL, and the two brothers were playing in the NFL right now. At the time. So I was like, absolutely, I'll come do that. So partnered up with them. We ran our restaurants. We did our own coffee shop on our own. We did another franchise that we got a part of ice cream. And then, one of the brothers retired from the NFL. The other one got hurt, couldn't fulfill the end of his contract. And then we just were going, well, their family had a tequila farm, and they decided they wanted to go that route and sell off the restaurants. I was all for that. And I just didn't want to go their route. I had the opportunity to join them, but I decided I didn't want to do that. And I knew I probably didn't want to go back into the restaurant world. But what I did know is that I wanted to start a business, and then I reflected on everything that I had learned. And I'd seen people that were in the restaurant business that were franchisees that had no business being in that world. They didn't understand that they were getting into a concept that probably was going to require more time commitment than they thought. They really didn't have the skill set for it. And it really was a giant mistake on their part and cost themselves, in some cases, unfortunately, unrecoverable loss of money. So I was like, well, you know what? I think what I want to do is become a franchise consultant of guiding people and athletes of the next step of, hey, this is the opportunities are out there, and let's go on that journey together to make sure it's a great fit for you that not only matches your skill set, but is going to be something that we're going to be able to just figure out what your goals are, and we'll be able to match that. So that really is how I got into this, and really with the people that are professionals looking to transition out. But I also really, as you know, love working with athletes. And in the franchise world, an athlete is perfect for that, because in franchise business, the franchisor gives you a playbook, and you've been following a playbook all your life. So it's a very natural fit.
Yeah, very, very good. I enjoyed listening to your that overview and identifying with some of it as you walk through it. But I'd like to go back to high school in that area when you were playing baseball and you were working on academics and thinking about the next step. How did your mindset flow then on life as to school, and then whether you were going to college or what was going to happen, what was going to do with your athletic skills?
George, I really made probably a big mistake of like, you know what, I am a good baseball player. I'm just going to go straight in and go to the minor leagues and work my way up through there. I never wanted to go the college route. Okay. I was a good student, but it was really not a passion of mine. I was like, I really would just love to get out and get into, the professional world of baseball. And then even when I was working in high school, working around the people in the restaurant business, I got around some people that said, hey, college is a very expensive avenue for you. And, you could go through 4 years of college and be great, but, you're going to have this amazing debt when you get done with college. Why don't you, really kind of work your way through that and grind and work your way up? So that was kind of the mindset that I had. Looking back on that, do I wish I would have had a different mindset? Probably, absolutely.
Yeah. James, when you participated did you participate in baseball in high school, and did you get any scholarship offers?
Yes, I did. And it was, it was a matter of having some scholarship offers and then, having the opportunity to go right into the minor leagues and play in professional.
Okay.
That was it. I
Yeah.
didn't care about at all.
Yeah. I think back to when I was in high school, which was before you were in high school, that a lot of baseball players did go straight from high school to the pros and did not go into college. So yeah, I identify that as it was then, and probably still is today. I'm not that familiar with how, but a lot of baseball players are identified sometimes in high school and can go straight to the pros even while they're in high school.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was just like, hey, this is the path that I want to do. I'm going to work my way up through the minor leagues. I was like, I'm not a student. Some people just are not students.
Sure,
And
sure.
this wasn't my love. And looking back on it, I would have really, I really wish I could have changed that part and had the college experience and done that. I really do.
Mm-hmm. But as you progress through minor leagues as a youngster, and you're around all of these adults at various different ages and in different points in their career, what was your learnings from these guys that you were playing and participating with?
It was really my first, probably just realization that professional sports isn't all about sports and your talent. It's about where you were drafted, your draft status, how much they paid you, maybe sometimes who maybe you were a dad of a coach that was in the organization. So I really went to, wow, this may be how the real world works too, of you're not on equal footing. You really are not.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of politics, if you will, that was involved in it, and as you said, a lot of it is who you know and where that connection, not bloodline, but that connection comes from. A lot of guys whose parents play, whose dads played, and so forth, enters into the equation. So, but you actually participated until you got injured, which was, how long a period was that?
Yeah, that was really quick. It was like in training camp through that. We were getting ready to start the season, and that was it. And really, George, I was miserable. And I never really thought I could be miserable playing, a sport in baseball, but I really was miserable. Part of it was just not mature enough to have the mindset of how to handle that failure and how to work your way through it. And it was like, wow, I what do I do now? I really was in a really down place for sure.
Okay, you're miserable. You're going through that. What got you through that? What actually got you through that to the next phase?
I really think that, it was just going back to faith and going, I've been put in this place. The Lord's put me here, and this is where I got to go. And you know what? I'm sure he has a better path for me, but there's something better out there. And, so it's like, okay, let's figure this out. And going back to my hometown, it was, I stopped by that restaurant and they go, hey, we would love to have you back. And then it just grew from there of, okay, I kind of love this, enjoy this. And even though I don't have sports professionally, I still can, run a sports organization within my work. And, I still, once I got healthy enough, I still went out and played, baseball, of course, or organized ball, but nothing to that magnitude.
Yeah. So as you're working through the restaurant and starting at the bottom, bus boy and utility guy, you have an opportunity. You come with a certain education of dealing with tough situations. You walk into the restaurant as a busboy and utility, and you see everything that's going on in the restaurant, from the waiter, waitresses, managers, and so forth. And you're able to sit back and watch them. Did that help you understand if you as you got your promotion, how you were able to set your management skills?
100%. Just kind of watch, observe, take their lead, and just kind of look what they were doing and observe that. And really, to be honest too, George, at the time when I went back into that, I was welcomed not with only open arms, but treated as some like a celebrity, because I went and played pro ball, even though it wasn't a long time. But hey, I was like the superhero of the place, and everybody wanted to help me. And I'm like, hey, I remember the night manager was there. Hey, this is, this kind of, you want to stick around late and just kind of watch what I do. And of course, I was always there. Yeah, I'll do anything extra I have to do. And I was like a big sponge of kind of soaking up all the information and what everybody was teaching me. And I just soaked it all up.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So you get into the franchising part of the business. Tell us a little bit more about how that began.
Yeah. So when I went, so my first grander, when we just started franchising, and my previous company that I worked with before I left to run that franchise division, I had dealt with franchisees in that system. So it was like, wow, this is really kind of cool of this. These guys have ownership in this. And one thing that I really thought of was, if they're an owner, they've got to be like multi-millionaires and just have money coming out, everywhere. And I was just like, oh my gosh, they're just a normal person that are much like myself, but they're working for themselves, which is amazing. But they're just kind of, everything's not easy for them. They're struggling and trying to make ends meet. And I was there when I realized, when I was supporting franchisees, supporting them at that time, that anything that I kind of helped them with, sure, when you're working for a corporation, you're opening a corporation and you're helping them, make better profits or make better systems. But when you're helping with franchisees in the franchise system, when you help them and give them a something that improves their business, you're not only improving their business, you're improving their lives. It may have been something to where they said, oh, wow, that, by implementing that, I had a couple extra hours a day that I got to spend with my family. So that's when I really became intrigued of franchising, franchisees, and just having that entrepreneur spirit.
Right. There's so many things about franchising. There's the franchisor, there's the franchisee, and there is those who want to franchise whatever type of business they have. And I want to kind of touch on this a little bit, given your experience, and get some comments back from you that will help our guests that are listening in. Now, you mentioned one thing that it just jumped out at me like crazy, and I was a franchise business coach, and I had some franchisees. I had 24 franchisees, and some of those franchisees did not like the corporation because of battles that they were having with the franchisor. Some of those franchisees did not like me for various different reasons across the board. And there were other franchisees that just felt like that they didn't know what to do. They just knew they had a brand, and that's where their whole life savings, because everything was tied into. Can you kind of talk to let's start off with the franchisor standpoint, because you're working for a franchisor and you're working with the franchisee. What did you find in visiting the different franchisees? What did you find the most important thing that you could bring to them?
The most important thing that I could bring to them was being their liaison and their voice back to the franchisor. Even though I work for the franchisor, I looked at it that I work for the franchisees. It was
Correct.
My job to be their ambassador. They have a problem or whatever, I'm going to the franchisor. I got to tell you, there were many times when I was very disappointed at some of the decisions that the franchisor came back and said, no, you got to go back and tell them this. Mm-hmm. And to skirt those issues, you just have to build trust, rapport of the franchisee to go, hey, I'm on your side on this. Mm-hmm. I'm just, let's try to figure out the best solution that we can. And you know what? At the end of the day, it's your business, and let's stay in these guidelines, and let's just try to move forward the best we can to make things more workable for you.
Mm-hmm. What, how many times did you run into the absentee franchisee that was not around, and a little old manager was doing the best that they could in trying to move the operation along? How were you able to work through those kinds of situations?
Oh, that's the classic situation that they bought a franchise and they thought the franchisor did all the work, right?
Yes.
Yeah, those were some of the funnest times, because it was, you bought into this and typically, as you know, they probably were the most underperformers in the whole system.
Right.
I mean, because they weren't paying attention to their business.
Right.
So it was basically, hey, let's call a meeting at the restaurant, and just basically say, here's kind of what you bought into.
Mm-hmm.
At this rate you're going, you either need to hire another layer of manager and supervise that manager, or you really need to be there more, because I know you're burning money now, and you're going to continue to burn money, and you're going to continue down this path if you don't change.
Mm-hmm.
George, sometimes, sadly, they wouldn't change.
Yeah. And they didn't last long.
And they did not last long.
Yes.
I mean, really, it's, hey, if you don't want to do this, let's work out an exit plan of selling your business. It's going to be at a loss. But if you don't want to do this, then let's just cut your losses now and sell.
Yeah. Some of the greatest experiences that I had during that time, and I'm sure you also, is when the franchisee and the operator who was operating for the franchisee start to see their sales increase and their profits increase, and understand that what you have taught them to do, and very simple stuff you taught them to do, all of a sudden they're making money, and I'm sure those experiences, you had those.
Oh gosh, yes. And it was, they were thinking I was telling them some big secret. It's like, it's just elementary. It's what you should have done in the first place. But you got to go. Sometimes franchisees didn't understand what they were getting themselves into, and just needed that little bit of guidance. And to me, those instances were the most rewarding of all.
Right. So if you were talking to our franchise audience, our audience today that may be thinking about franchising, what would, and not franchising in a small picture, but it's franchising in a big picture, where they have a franchisor that they're signing a contract with, and what kind of advice would you tell them in looking to get into a franchise?
Really, I would say it all is about kind of what I do when I work with someone. Is you got to do your homework. Just because it's a shiny name, maybe, or something that looks great, and you've had many meetings with the franchisor, and you go, gosh, this sounds amazing. You still got to peer behind the curtain, and you got to ask, you got to say, can I talk with some franchisees in the system? And you got to talk with them, and you got to talk with at least 3 of them, and know that not everyone's going to have great things to say about it. So just know that, and don't let that impact your decision. But what you're looking for is, what kind of support do I get when I pick up the phone? Are they there to answer and support me? And would you do this again? And how quickly, were you profitable? Because I think those are all very important aspects of that. And you need to kind of have that validation in the system.
Yeah. And how often do you recommend that your franchisees, in this particular case, get to go to meetings that the franchisor may be having in different parts of the country, that it may require traveling, but do you recommend them to go to these meetings and share experiences with other franchisees?
Absolutely. I would say if it requires traveling, oftentimes now, a lot of times franchisors in the system today do have calls that they invite prospective franchisees on, which absolutely, go on those calls and listen, and you'll get a good gauge of what the system looks like and what the franchisees help you.
Yeah, virtual calls are just regular calls are good. But I would also go a step further and say go to those meetings if you can, because it's not only what you learn in going and sitting and listening, but when you have the breakout sessions and you're able to talk to other franchisees, you visit the booths and see what else is out there. And sometimes you learn things that there was not really what you intentionally went there for, but these are things that you can take back to your business and help, such as how to work with your employees, and things of that nature.
Yeah, I think that's 100% right on that, George. Anytime, it's just adding that, checking another box and
Right.
just doing that research. And that absolutely helps. Face to face, it really, you're going to kind of get a read on a person if they go, yeah, I love the system. And you go, that no, they don't. They don't really love the system. So absolutely, you're 100% right.
One of the toughest franchisee situations, and I'll ask you what you've run into, but one of the toughest situations I ran into, there was a husband and wife that owned two KFCs in Jacksonville Beach area, and the husband ran it, but they were so far removed to what was really happening in the business that he had everything sitting on one of the tables. I mean, all his whole administrative end on one of the tables close to the cash register, watching the cash register and doing his paperwork and keeping his assets almost in a cigar box and making a deposit at the end of the day. That totally freaked me out when I saw that. But he became one of the real true people in the system after about a year of working with him.
Wow.
What situation did you run into?
Yeah, I would run into, again, much like the absentee owner of like, hey, I James, I've stopped coming to my restaurant because I just don't like it. I don't like the people that I hired. And I don't know how to get out of this. I don't like my man. I don't like anything about it. He's like, I'm just staying away. I'm being honest. I said, well, let's come up with a plan. Let's do a hiring fair. I'll help you screen your applicants. I want you to be the final judge, because I knew I couldn't hire for them, because that would mean, that would mean that I told them to hire these people. But let's do a hiring fair. Let's hire you a whole new crew. And I went and got permission from another franchisee up the street. Let's train them there. I laid out the expense it was going to be. Let's train them in this other store. You're going to have a crew. You're going to have some new managers come in. And then when they're ready to go, let's just swap out your team and let's just start over. And we did that, and his restaurant just took off. I would tend to say more than likely, well, I know that half the crew there was stealing from him, and it was just out of control. And after we made that switch of a new team, he was all in and back into the restaurant and engaged, and made a massive turnaround.
Right. So you're at the company Fran Dream, and you start moving on. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So the Fran Dream, what I do is I work with athletes and professionals, and they'll come to me and they'll say, hey, let's, I'm thinking about doing a franchise. I'm like, okay, that's great. What kind is your investment level? They'll come up with an investment level. Okay, you want to do owner operator, or you want to be passive? We talk about that. And then we talk about, well, what's the goal? What's the goal? Are you looking to transition out of your job? And then if that's the goal, what kind of money do you want to make? And then 5 years from now, what would you like to be in this franchise? Oh, if I just want one store and that's all I want, that's great. But I might want to add one or two on. Then we'd have to look at some different franchises and territories where they have room to grow. So basically kind of help them with that. And then we talk about all the different industries that are out there, out in the franchise, which is every industry pretty much. But we talk about the different type of maybe something in the golf industry, in the grooming industry. This last year in 2025, I placed the most clients in a golf simulator business, the Back Nine. That was that year. In 2020, the year before that, it was Bark Suds, a dog grooming company. So it always can kind of tend to be different. But of course, during that time, I placed many people in many different franchise and different industries. And it's just all really a matter of finding the best match for that candidate and then introducing them to the franchisor, then staying with them to, talk about what we just talked about of, hey, we got to make sure that it's a good fit for you. You got to talk with franchisees in the system. Here's how you read a FDD. All those things kind of help guide them through, so it's not an overwhelming little maze to them.
You want to highlight what FDD is?
Yeah, that's true, right? Yeah, franchise disclosure document. That is all the fees that you're going to pay, but it also has everything that the franchisor is going to do and help you. So that is like your Bible before signing the contract, and something that you really need to go through and make sure that there's nothing hidden there or nothing that you didn't understand and go, oh my gosh, I didn't know I had to pay $1,000 technology fee every month.
Right.
Yeah.
But it also identifies any particular legal issues that may have been franchisor that is may have had. So it's an important document.
There's an earnings claim in there, but I would say those earnings claims you kind of want to explore those on your own through franchisees. Absolutely, there's earnings claim and there's just a lot of different, like you said, if the franchisee or had 10 franchisees, it's going to say at the end of the year, we had 9. Oh, what happened to the one? So it lists that in the FDD.
Yeah. I just returned from the NBA All-Star weekend out in California. And I'm one of the several franchisees successful franchisees that have, and business persons that have been in the business for a long period of time. I've been in the restaurant business as a franchisee for over 40 years. And so I get a lot of the former athletes. Most of our guys are retired guys that want to understand, want to get into franchising, want to do something. And I always ask them the tough questions. And sometimes I think they feel that I'm trying to talk them out of it, or trying to put all the negatives out there, which is really just a cold, hard question. So how do you handle those kinds of conversations when you I'm guessing now that these people are coming to you and you have to start off at ground zero to explain it. How do you do that?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny that you mentioned athletes and different aspects and asking them those tough questions. I just had this yesterday. I was talking with a very young athlete, George. That guy played college football and has all this money because of NIL money. like, wow, we're on a different era, right? Like, oh my God.
Whole new, yes.
Whole new, like, whoa, okay. And he's like, I want a restaurant. I'm like, okay, well, why do you want a restaurant? Well, because that's how Shaq made it and Junior Benjamin made it. And I said, let's talk about the restaurant industry. It's the highest investment out there. It's the biggest failure rate. And the margins are really, really, really thin. Because you see all those cars in the drive-thru doesn't mean they're making money hand over fist. It's a business that's going to require 24/7. So why don't we look at a dog grooming business that's maybe a quarter of that investment level that does 30% margins over 10% margins. And we kind of just I don't force the dog. We just kind of getting them to see the overall picture of maybe that, because everyone always typically goes, I want a restaurant. It's like, okay, lifestyle, investment level, return on investment. So yeah, it really is asking those tough questions of, do you really want a restaurant? And then the biggest thing is getting someone to understand, I just pay the franchise fee and I'm done, right? No, it's your business.
You're getting started.
You're going to start the business, and you have to buy all the furnishings, and you have to buy all the equipment, and you have to make the engine go. They're just giving you the playbook and putting those guardrails up so you can't veer off the road, but you are responsible for it. So those are really the first ones, like where you go, oh, I just invest in it. It's not really an investor model.
Jim, I remember when my first restaurant, and I had worked for the corporation 8 years and had been a franchisee coach and so forth. But I opened that restaurant, and the first 8 days, it was just wall to wall, busy, 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 busy. And finally, I had to shut it down one day to get caught up and give my people a rest, which is something you don't want to do. But I made that decision to do it just to take a deep breath. And I'd underprojected on things. But we got through that. And the next big concern, a big issue that I had was there was a convention in Hawaii. And all of my friends I'd worked with and that on the corporate side, they were all headed to Hawaii. And I had opened this restaurant. I had to stay put, and I literally almost cried because I could not enjoy that experience. But I remembered all of those franchisees that I had advised and how difficult it is to get off the ground that first 2-3 years of business, and also to make sure you have a good solid workforce. That was probably the one thing to even today still stands out of my mind going through that. So as an athlete, you have this ego, you feel that you can do everything and it's going to work, and you can get away sometimes. And that's a mindset that I think that a lot of prospective franchisees as athletes need to understand. That is hard work, 7 days a week.
It is hard work. It definitely is not something where just because it's a franchise that the name or it's going to make it go, or you have the support that they're going to run it for you. It is hard work, something that you have to do. I mean, the reward is tremendous on it, but it is something that you're going to have to put some energy in and energy behind to make it grow. And the whole thing is grow it and then back off it and get your people in place. And then it is an amazing industry to be in.
Yeah. Let me get your opinion on bigger versus better, smaller operations operating good, big operations maybe operating not so good. In other words, a lot of our athletes come in and they want to have 10, 20, 30. They want to be as large as Junior Bridgman, let's say, right. And versus having one or two great operating restaurants. What's your philosophy there?
Yeah, my philosophy is just like even franchise systems. You got to grow in the right way, in the right system. I really, sometimes a franchisor will go, well, if you do a 10-store deal, your franchise fee is going to be so much smaller. Mm-hmm. It's like, well, okay, there's some benefits to that, but I would say, come in maybe 3 units max, and then have your schedule of, year 2, then year 3 is going to be building the 3 years. But there is nothing wrong with building one location and then deciding to do that again. And really, to me, it's like, okay, we're in this marriage, so I'm going to do this one location and we're going to see how this works. But there's nothing that says venture number 2 has to be your venture. It may be something else if I don't like the system and the support that I'm getting.
Right. Yeah, you can have one location and make a comfortable living out of it and not have as much debt versus having, let's just say 10 restaurants where 4 are underperforming and you got all that debt versus 6 that are doing a good job. A lot of people don't understand Junior Bridgman's story when he first started off with 4 restaurants, Wendy's up in the Milwaukee area versus where he was when he passed away last year, and with the number of restaurants and other businesses that he developed and how he gradually built those restaurants over the year. So it's always an interesting dealing with athletes, and getting them over the hump. But as we get near our program, you want to talk in terms of how the audience might find your company and get involved, how you might help them at the website material?
Yeah, I'm really thefrandream.com's my website. There's a contact form there, or you can just James@thefrandream.com's my email. just get in contact with me. I would love to just talk franchising with you. I've talked with people that have said, we've walked away and said, maybe franchising isn't for you. And, franchising is not for you when you do not want to follow a system and you think that, that's not going to be for you. And you don't really kind of want to have rules and regulations. And then, franchising is really probably not the avenue to go about having a business.
Right. Franchising is not for everyone. It sounds good, but it's not for everyone. James, I want to thank you for being with us today. And we've enjoyed some deep conversations, deep, passionate conversations, because you and I have traveled some of the same paths early on. And, ownership, if you don't have the discipline and so forth, it may not necessarily be for you. So I want to thank you for being a part. Our audience, I want to thank you for joining us in this conversation. And certainly if you are interested in getting in touch with James, you have his information out there, and certainly reach out. And some of you athletes out there at high school is making that NIL money, that may want to get interested. James can certainly give you some insight and background on how to move forward in your goal. Our program is Catch as Catch Can, turning obstacles to opportunity. We appreciate each one of you tuning in, dialing in, and participating in the program. So, James, I want to thank you and have a wonderful day.
Thank you so much. I cannot believe it was, our time is up. I mean, I think we could do this.
Do it forever. Yeah, I agree. Well, thank you again.
Thank you.
This has been Catch as Catch Can. The game isn't over. Your success story is just getting started. Head to tinsleyspeaks.com for exclusive content, resources, and opportunities. Catch as Catch Can with George Tinsley Sr., a production of Live Stream Editors.